Okay, welcome back. Picking up where we left off, we're talking about the rules for writing, which may not actually appear in the APA guide because it has nothing to do with formatting. And we're talking about positional referencing. So, in a scholarly journal, you might write a document and let's say it's 20 pages long. But in the when it comes printed, it may be like the first 2 pages are on page 5 and 6, and then page 45 is where you pick up the rest. So you can't, for example, you can't say, see such and such on the next page, or see the chart below, or because you don't know if it's going to be below. Perhaps it's going to be on the next column and it's going to be above. So since you don't know physically how it's going to appear when printed, don't make any positional referencing whatsoever. Don't say see above, see below, see next page. Just say see figure 1 or chart 2 or whatever it is that you're talking about. And wherever that appears is perfectly okay. Okay. Remember that every time you do a citation, there has to be a matching reference. Okay? So, for example, if I see, you're citing, Smith from 1994, then I expect to find something in the references that matches that. Okay? That kind of makes sense. And another one is don't forget to reference things. I mean, if you have something in your references, it must appear. You must have cited it somewhere, because listing a reference without citing it, it's like, well, gee, thank you, but you apparently didn't use that reference. Likewise, if you have a table or a figure, you can't just throw a table or a figure in and say, well, here it is. No, you have to refer to it. So you have to say, figure 1 shows, or the results are shown in table 4, that kind of stuff. So just like references, all tables, figures, and references have to have some sort of a citation in the body of your document. Okay. Okay. So the next thing we're going to talk about is actual how to do the APA. Now, I have another video, a series of optional videos, which are, quite frankly, pretty doggone good. It's from another course, okay, that I taught some time ago. And it talks about how to configure Microsoft Word to help you take the tedium out of doing APA. Okay, so if you're interested in knowing how to do this, please do watch those other videos. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through some of this supplemental material. And this is under modules. And so modules, and I'm just going to pull up this first one. And this is going to tell you everything you need to know. And instead of having this small version, I'm going to go ahead and just download it so I can go full screen here. So I'm going to go ahead. Okay, so let's talk about how you do APA. So right off the bat, here's some general things. There's a 1-inch margin, top, bottom, left, and right. Okay, that's cool. That's probably the default for Microsoft Word. I'm not absolutely certain. All text should be double spaced. Now, there is a couple of exceptions to the rule. For example, some figures and tables and things where, it would physically make it bigger than us, would fit on a single page. But for all intents and purposes, everything in your document should be double spaced. Okay. Paragraph should be indented a 1/2 inch. And the font for the entire document is 12-point Times Roman. And I do mean the entire document, because over here we're going to have a heading. Remember, like in Microsoft Word, there's things called headers and footers. So you have a header at the top of the page and a footer at the bottom of the page. We don't actually use the footer part, but we do use the header part. And everything, to include the page numbers, is supposed to be Times Roman 12-point. And typically, I do, in a normal page, it'd be flush left margin, but a ragged right margin, normal kind of thing. So, on the first page, you remember the first page in the entire document is the title page, right? Okay, so in the title page, I want you to repeat the title up here in a heading. Now, I'll admit, if I have a really, really huge, long title of your document, maybe you could kind of shorten it up and maybe leave a couple words out or something, because it basically has to physically fit on the page. Okay, So this is in full uppercase, okay? And then there's this word, a phrase that gets added only to the very first page in your document and used nowhere else. Hey, I didn't make up these things. Somebody else did. I'm just telling you that this word's running head get added just this once to the top of the first page. Okay, whatever. And then there's a page number. And then you put in your title and your name and your reference. And typically that part of the title page ought to be above the fold, which means, the top half of the document. Okay, cool. So to show an example here, here's an example where they have the words running head with a colon, and then the title of a document here, which it talks about the title is Using Prayer in Professional Counseling, but they shortened it up a tiny bit. It just said Prayer Professional Counseling. Okay, that's okay. Anyway, this is in full uppercase, but not the words running head. Okay. We're not going to use the author note section, so we won't have anything down here. Okay, so that's page 1. Woohoo! All right, page 2 is going to be the abstract. And so the formatting of the abstract is kind of weird. The word abstract is centered but not bold. And then you have this abstract. And we talked about what goes in the abstract. But typically it's not going to be, how about this? It's never going to be more than a page. Probably somewhere around a half a page is about right. And this is the only paragraph in the entire document that is not indented. Once again, I didn't make these rules. I'm just telling you. So that one paragraph is the only place you do not indent. And this one location is the only place where you add the word running head. Okay. All right. And then you have the introduction. Oddly enough, you do not use the word introduction. Instead, you repeat the title. Okay. So that's how that works. And then you have, in the body of the document, you're going to have different levels of document levels. So you have like a level 1 heading, which is a big heading. Then a level 2, like it would be like a subheading underneath there, and a level 3 and a level 4. This particular document starts off with the introductory paragraph, and then a level 1 heading that basically starts the discussion. And so level 1 headings are bold and centered. Now, in this particular document, what they say is uppercase. What I would call this title case. Title case means the first word, the first letter of every word is capitalized. Okay, so I call this up here, I call that full uppercase, and I call that I said it wrong. I call that title case. Okay. So here's a level 2 heading. Level 2 headings are not centered but bold and in title case. And there's a level 3, which is flush left, not bold and title case. And there's a level 4, which we probably won't get to. Okay. There's 2 different ways that you can do a citation. One is called a narrative citation, where you actually, in your document, you actually say, according to Smith, the number of bushels of wheat harvested last year was, okay? Well, you actually just make it part of the narrative. That's okay. Now, I personally don't use that because it works really well for like short things, but doesn't work very well for like an entire paragraph. You know, kind of see what I'm getting at? If it's like a short sentence or a short factoid, then yeah, that kind of works. But if it's like this entire sentence kind of came from this source, this entire paragraph kind of came from that source. So the other way, an alternate way, is at the end of the sentence or paragraph, you'd put in parentheses, and then you would say, for example, that the author, the year, and the page number that it came from. So you don't actually say out loud that, this came from Smith. You just put it in parentheses, and so you would go look it up. This is the one that I prefer, but it's just a personal preference. If you don't do it that way, I'm not going to take points off. Okay. All right. So, bullet lists, you can use numbered lists or bullet lists. Typically, they're indented. I try to indent them so that see how the words are lined up on the half-inch mark. So this is a half-inch indent for that paragraph. And if you look at that, you can kind of see that the words, not the bullets, not the numbers, but the words are lined up on that half-inch margin. Cool? All right. So let's assume you got a bunch of level 1s and level 2s. I would, for example, going back to what I mentioned in the previous video, I expect you would probably have some sort of a summary or conclusion, or perhaps a summary and conclusion. Yeah, I expect those to be level 1s, like some sort of a discussion. And if you're evaluating 4 things, well, maybe that'll be level 2s. And when you get down to the summary, well, then that would be like another level 1. And use your best judgment. Most people don't have trouble figuring out. Okay, when it comes time to references, at the end of your document, so there's no footnotes, okay? In the end of your document, you're going to have a separate page with the word references across the top. And just like abstract, it's centered but not bold. And then you have all these references. Now, I will tell you that the citations, this references part, is probably the most complicated part, and I'll tell you the honest to God truth. I do not bother to know all this stuff. I use Microsoft Word. So if you use Microsoft Word and you tell it that you're using APA 6th edition, and you just hit citation and you just fill out the information, it'll format it correctly for you, and you don't have to do anything, okay? I'm just telling you. Now, if you decide to do this by hand, this is what's called a hanging indent. You know, up here, paragraphs are indented like this. The first line of the paragraph is indented, right? Well, down here, it's the exact opposite. It's the first line is flush left, and all other lines, like here, all other lines are indented. So it's the exact opposite. It's called a hanging indent. The exact opposite of a normal indent. Okay. Now, I'm not going to go too much of this because I'm going to show you a cheat sheet where you can get that. Okay, so that's essentially how that part works. Block quotes, there's kind of an example here, but you can't see it very much. Sometimes you can put things in quotes, you know, if it's just like a sentence or a part of a sentence. But if you want to bring particular attention to an entire chunk, maybe a particular person said, 5 or 6 sentences that were extraordinarily appropriate, then you would do this hanging, what's called a block quote, where the left and right margins are indented half an inch. Now you do the citation like normal, okay? It's just that if you do it this way, you don't have to use quotation marks. And this works really well, particularly if somehow the quote that you're quoting has quotation marks in it. I know, it's kind of weird to say that. Okay, kind of makes sense? All right, so again, I'm expecting you to have like a summary and conclusion that, isn't in this guide, but that's okay. So the order in which these things appear is important. After this, you're going to have the other items in there. We talked about the tables and figures. So a table is text, and a figure is something that's not text. So a figure could be a graph, or like a chart, a bar chart, or maybe it's a photograph or something like that. So tables are just, you know what a table is. Rows and columns of numbers and facts, whatever it is. Like an Excel spreadsheet kind of a thing, right? Just rows and columns. And then, so everything else is considered a figure, whether it be, a graphic, a photograph, a chart, or whatever it is. Something that's not text. Okay, obviously you can have text in it. But the order in which these things are kind of important. Tables and then those figures at the end. Okay, we've coming up on the 15-minute mark. We'll stop this video and see you guys again in just a few.